I wish everyone got to see what I got to see. I got to see the full dance.
I was waiting for you to drop bars, man. I was waiting for you to drop bars.
Yeah, I found a royalty free hip hop beat that I actually liked, which is rare, and that is what starts the song. And Danny O'Neill, my guest today, was dancing. I may be able to, because we're doing local recordings. I may be able to throw a little at the end. So hang around at the end of the podcast, and you might get to see a little bit of dancing.
I was bobbing my head. It made me move.
Yeah, it's not bad. By the way, you're wearing the same Sonics hat that I have on. I recorded a comedy special, and I'm wearing that exact same Sonics hat. So we are gathered here today to talk about multiple things. The most recent of which is the Thunder are as you listen to this, they've probably already played their first game or are about to play their first game against the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals. The second NBA Finals they've played in since leaving Seattle. And I'm finding myself, Danny, and you can tell me if you feel this way or not, I'm finding myself not as emotionally invested in them losing this particular finals. I think one of the reasons that's obvious is none of the players that played for the Sonics are there anymore. We're so far removed from them, and it also kind of feels like there's light at the end of the tunnel as a Sonics fan. Are you still like full? You have a blog on Substack called the Grudgery, so maybe you are not as quick to forgive as I am. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I want them. I wouldn't say I want them to lose more than I wanted them to lose last time they were in the finals. But I probably have more heightened emotion because I really thought they were going to lose to the Heat. And I don't expect them to lose to the Pacers, but I know that they're the favorites. I know. And if you forced me to make a pick with my life depending on it, I would pick the Thunder, but God, I really hope they don't. No, I'm still just as petty and I want them to lose in a Game 7 overtime at home or be swept. One of those two. It would probably be the first Game 7 overtime at home. Them losing would be glorious. Like that would be just glorious. And the only thing better, the next best would be if they got a four game sweep.
That would be very nice. It's one of the things that's been tough for me the whole time that they've been gone is Sam Presti is like the exact kind of GM I would love to see in charge of every Seattle team. Like everything he's done has been for the NBA too, especially in an era of the NBA of these super teams and all the stars wanting to go to big markets and play in big markets. He's managed to maintain a competitive team that's got a homegrown core in the finals. Like, how beautiful would that have been in Seattle? You know what I mean? And I do think that's the one thing that makes it still feel fresh is that you're like this team that's got like its second shot at a 7-footer that can handle the ball and shoot from the outside. It's like its second shot at the finals with a 7-footer, but now that guy is your second option or worse on this team. It's just like the team is constructed so beautifully that it's so painful. That part makes it very painful for me still.
Presti's tenure, I think is 18 years. If the Sonics had stayed, if we go to the Bizarro universe and say they never leave, and Harden, Westbrook, and Durant are Sonics, and then this group that's now with the Thunder are Sonics, you'd have a pretty strong argument that Sam Presti was the best sports executive in city history. It's not a slam dunk. John Schneider deserves a lot of credit and is in that conversation. But you would have a pretty strong argument with the staying power that Presti's had. Look, building something twice is really remarkable, and he has absolutely done that.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the thing that Schneider's trying to do right now, right? Is like to build this a second time, and it feels like we're headed that direction. But yeah, it's pretty remarkable. This Indiana team is interesting, but I'm kind of with you where it's like it just feels so imminent.
Yeah, I've been able to talk myself. So here would be my case of
All
why
right.
I'm really hoping. Rick Carlisle is one of the three best NBA coaches of the past 20 years. The number of teams that he's been highly won 50 games with the Pistons, got fired. They went and hired Larry Brown, won the title. Was with the Pacers team that was really good. Won a title with the Mavs, which is probably one of the two or three most surprising NBA titles of the past 20 years when the Mavs beat the LeBron James Super Friends. And now is with the Pacers. So you've got a really good coach. The Pacers are maybe deeper than the Thunder. They're probably the only team that goes as deep and plays as fast. I don't know how all the matchups are going to play out. I don't know if they're going to have someone that can stay with SGA or avoid the flops that SGA. I'm, but they're going to have bodies to throw at it. So that would be my argument for why they've got a shot. They've got a better coach. They're just as deep. They're just as fast. And Halliburton is pretty incredible playmaker, though not the scorer SGA is.
Sure. How do you? I mean, even like, because Presti, I don't think gets enough credit for kind of being one of the early architects of the positionless team.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's really just done it. He's done it with this. Like this is like really the perfection of the positionless team. And I obviously there's many copycats across the league, but SGA is such a perfect fit for that. I mean, is he 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah. Yeah, he's long. He's pretty long for a scoring guard. The thing is, the first time he did it, it was with top 5 picks. It was with Durant and Westbrook and Harden, and he hit on him, and he deserves credit for that. This time, I mean, yeah, Chet Holmgren's top of the draft pick, but SGA is a guy that they acquired when they had to trade Paul George, and the rest of the guys are largely people that are mid first round picks, if that. So he's got an eye for how to build a deep, fast team. I just hope that this team brings them unending pain. The final result leaves them all doubled over. I hope for a franchise crippling loss that strikes doubt and uncertainty deep into the heart of their core. Somebody gets unhappy, decides they need more shots somewhere else. I hope there's a franchise destabilizing loss.
It's this guy that we both respect so much, Sam Presti, suddenly is caught with like a lady of the night in the middle of Tijuana, and his career goes the way of Mike Price, and we all just, yeah, no, I'm with you. I would like to see the maybe, you know, like a tornado sweeps through. Nobody's in there. I don't want victims, but like tears the arena apart. And it's directly correlated somehow to a celebration in Indianapolis. I will say I've been to both these towns, Indianapolis and Oklahoma City, for comedy. Both very good comedy towns. Indianapolis quite a bit smarter than Oklahoma City. That's my take.
I've been to Oklahoma City once. I thought they call it Bricktown. Is that the downtown?
Yep.
I thought was very, very nice. I've always thought Indianapolis is an underrated city. I like all of the Rust Belt towns that are up there. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Indianapolis isn't quite the same, but I would throw. I love those cities.
Yeah, in COVID, I had a friend of mine that was considering moving for comedy, and I was like, I was talking to him. I was like, yeah, I'm just fantasizing if my family would ever let me move, what cities I would move to. And he took my list and then did it. So my number 1 was Indianapolis. Number 2 was Cincinnati, because so close to New York, so close to Chicago, good clubs in those towns, good airports in those towns, and also so cheap to live there. If I could do it all over again, I would move my whole family so that I could still have childcare to Indianapolis, and I could probably afford to, because it's negative $5 for a home in Indianapolis, and you get like 40 head of cattle when you arrive. It's crazy. But yeah, Oklahoma City's cool. Bricktown's cool. It's Bricktown Comedy Club is the club that I go to down there, and it is cool, but it's like in the way that I say like Tacoma. I live in Tacoma. Tacoma has like one neighborhood that would be like a Portland neighborhood. Like that, the east side of Portland has like 6 neighborhoods. We have one of those neighborhoods at 6th Avenue in Tacoma. Bricktown is like if you just took like a quarter of Pioneer Square. That's what Bricktown is. There is cool stuff there, but it's like you're like, oh, it's over? Like we already passed it all? Like it was like 6 blocks.
Yeah. That's one of the benefits of growing up in. I saw one of the guys I used to work with was referring to. He grew up in a rural environment because he was in Redmond back in like the 60s, and I was like, that's not rural.
Sure.
You lived in King County, man. Like rural is a place where like the Bi-Mart is that you don't have both a Bi-Mart and a Kmart. You have a Bi-Mart that it's an hour and a half to anywhere with a Toys R Us, which was so. I think one of the keys is growing up where somewhere that really is in the middle of nowhere, and then you appreciate everything.
Yeah, that's fair. Where do you fall on Enumclaw? Because Enumclaw is King County, and I did a show with someone out there recently, and they were like, yeah, this is like kind of my de facto Seattle show. And I was like, oh, dude, this is not a Seattle show. Whoever you thought was going to be coming to this show, this is not a Seattle show. Don't worry about sharing audience with Seattle. This is not a Seattle show.
What's the one thing you think of with Enumclaw?
I mean, of course, that's the one thing you think of about Enumclaw. And like, by the way, 2/3 of the comics that perform out there for the first time, they do a joke about that because they Google it.
You got to know your crowd.
Yeah.
My woman I dated when we were in college, we were together for more than a year. She was a reporter at the Seattle Times who wrote the story about. And so what was very funny was listening because the first story just said it happened. And I think it mentioned an encounter with the horse, and then the overwhelming number of questions, like people wanted specifically, how did this gentleman die? Like, it wasn't, they were not accepting the explanation of he had an encounter of an equine nature and passed away. Like they're like, what happened? They're like, fine, you want to know? He ruptured his colon. Are you happy?
Yeah. What a way to be known. I mean, not only are they known for that forever, but can you imagine just like being that guy's family? And this is like, I mean, I guess we don't know his name, or I don't know his name. Maybe you've got it tattooed on your back.
I don't think I've ever read his name.
Okay, so maybe he's been left anonymous at, just it's like the beginning of Fargo, where they say like the names of the victims were changed, but the names of the rest of the details were the same. That's a brutal legacy to leave. Yes. And also to not have to like sit in at all, right? Like he's dead. He doesn't have to deal with any of this. Yeah.
There's no transition out of that.
Yeah. That's like
the best little horse house in Enumclaw. You're never going to make it out of there.
Best little horse house is so funny. That's like being a Hitler in 1948. Like you got to change it. You just gotta. You might be one of the the Cincinnati Hitlers. You got to change the name, right?
Well, Monty Jones, who hosts a sports podcast, he was actually saying, because I wish I could see a graph of the frequency of the first name Adolf and watch 1946. That was never happening again.
The other reason we were talking a little bit leading up to, I realize now that it was in September of 2024. I think I hit you up about it, and it was on my mind the whole off season. We went through the kind of like waiting period, not hearing that Dave Sims had signed an extension that had apparently been offered to him, and there was the rumor that he was interested in, and there was mutual interest in him becoming the Yankees radio play-by-play guy, and then it happens. And It's interesting because I have a lot of friends. A lot of my friends are lifelong Seattle sports fans who are aware of the legacy of Dave Niehaus and who have been watching the Mariners since long before Dave Sims was here. I mean, and also that's like a sign of age, by the way.
Yeah.
That's crazy because Dave Sims was here for a long time. He was here. In my mind, it was like he had to replace Dave Niehaus, and to a degree that was true, but it wasn't. They did overlap for a couple years.
Yes.
And in my mind, like, won't let me believe that because I remember very vividly Dave Niehaus going to his memorial at Safeco Field at the time, obviously, and how devastating his sudden death was. And then I've thought the whole time that Dave Sims did a remarkable job not trying to replace, but stepping in for the role that Dave Niehaus had. And I feel like he has, on social media, taken shit the whole time I've been, like, aware of people's opinions of him.
I would agree with you. It's always a little bit strange because I don't have as strong of opinions. I've come to realize I don't have as strong of opinions about the quality of hometown announcers. I generally consider people that I listen to regularly. I guess there are some whose styles I like more than others, but I generally feel that I'm pretty accepting of it. I would, even among that, I would always say, like, I really enjoyed Dave's calls. I liked listening to him, and I would echo absolutely what you said. It's a really tricky position to try and carry on after sort of a seminal part of franchise history, because Dave Niehaus, I mean, whatever you want, Dave Niehaus was the most successful thing that the Mariners did for the first 20 years of their existence.
Yes,
for the most
very
part.
true.
Like that was it. They had 14 years before they ever had a winning record. They went almost 20 years. Was it 18 seasons before they got to the playoffs? Like Dave Niehaus was it. And I remember talking and interviewing Dave Sims before the season after Dave Niehaus had passed, and him talking about, hey, you've got to acknowledge it. He's a huge part of it, but it can't be in memoriam broadcast. Like you've got to continue calling the games. That's and I've always thought Dave did a really good job with that. I tended to think he was better on radio than on TV. And I did listen to a lot of games on radio, but I was always puzzled by that, why there was as much hostility as there was toward Dave, because I genuinely liked his calls, and I'll say I think he's an exceptional football radio broadcaster. I think the football broadcasts he did on radio are exceptional. I think he's one of the best.
Yeah, well, and to be like the level, I think people don't. First off, he's an out-of-town guy. I don't expect everybody in the world to be aware of an East Coast broadcaster. Him coming to Seattle was pretty risky for his career, I would suspect, or at least for the legacy of his career. I'm sure he got paid enough money to make it not all that risky. But, like, he had for years a show with Mike Krzyzewski. Like, he is, in the way that there are, like, guys who are just professional broadcasters, I think, like, Tony Kornheiser would be one of these guys. Jim Gray probably is in this category. Guys who are just like multifaceted, multi-talented, have done so many different things. Dave Sims, and also Dave Sims, I think the other part about him that I think it's jarring when people find out he's in his 70s, because he looks so good, and he like, I mean, I'm not like, he looks so much younger and he sounds so much more youthful and energetic. And then you hear the stories about like he tore his Achilles playing pickup basketball, like, and then you go, he had to be like 65 when he was doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That basketball pickup game, because there was another injury. He tore his Achilles. Did Riz hurt himself?
I think Riz did a knee or an Achilles himself.
Yeah, just triage that was done after that game. Dave was WFAN, which is kind of considered the flagship for sports talk radio. That's located here in New York. Sims was part of one of their first all sports lineups.
Sure.
He's a huge part of history. And yeah, I do think it was a little risky, especially as he is an East Coast guy,
Yeah.
and East Coast and West Coast sensibilities, and Seattle specifically, it's a different sporting sense. Like
Hmm.
people view things differently, and how the dialogue. I thought he did a great job of blending in and had great energy.
Yeah, I thought that stuff was actually pretty charming, to be honest with you. That
Mhm.
was kind of people would be like, I heard or I read maybe on Twitter some. I I guess I'll just say who it was. It was Steve Sandmeyer was like, I hate the fake gangster accent. I hate this and I hate that. I'm like, oh, this is like all just stuff because you grew up in whatever like Seattle suburb and you just have never. I don't know. Like I that stuff all was charming to me because it was authentic and different. People would get mad that he would pronounce Spanish names correctly, and I'm like, yeah, he's from Philadelphia and New York. Like here, you learn how to pronounce a Spanish name from a white person. There's like the Puerto Rican mother of that person is there to say his name correctly. You know what I mean? Like it's a different place. I always felt like it was authentic. The voice was like certainly had like a mid-Atlantic, like old-timey radio voice, and I thought
Mhm.
it was charming because I thought it was like I don't think he was faking it. I don't think that's the voice you would fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Do you have broadcasters that you really don't like? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. Like there was a couple weeks ago, there was one of the radio hosts in town was complaining about an accent.
Mm.
I find myself I'm not someone who has these very strong pointed like, oh, I can't stand hearing this person.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I will say of that radio host, I said this recently, like my first couple times hearing Ryan Rowland-Smith on a full broadcast, there was like I had to like calibrate for it a little bit. And it's not something I'm proud of, but it's true. I had to just be like, oh, this is like a little different. And then I got there. And in the same way, like I will say, when Jessica Mendoza started broadcasting baseball
Yeah.
games, it would be like, oh, this is just not what or Doris Burke, another good example. Like you have to just kind of, you're like, this isn't what I'm used to. And then you're like, oh, it's great. It's still fine. Like that's how I feel. I think that dude was trying to be funny and it failed. And then he doubled down because he was embarrassed. That's my view. It's like,
I would tend
by
to
the way,
agree with you.
I can relate to that more than anything. Like I can relate to bombing a joke for sure.
Yes. That was 100% what happened there was
Yeah.
that something didn't go over the way he thought it was, and then he just broke out a shovel and made it about 50 times worse.
Yeah.
I would say I'm the exact same way that you are, which is there are times it will stop me and I'll be like, huh. And then it's kind of part of the experience. I like hearing different things, and I
Yeah.
don't mind getting used to it a little bit.
I even like I guess I probably am more like you than because you asked me if there's anyone I really hate. I don't think there is, but I will say I end up defending. Like I think Joe Buck is pretty good, and people they want to say Joe Buck is terrible. I'm like he's fine. He's like what is he doing wrong?
Yeah, I tend to like Buck too. There was one period of time where I hated Buck, and so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here. He lectured Randy Moss about a fake mooning once in a broadcast,
Oh
where it
sure.
was like, "I apologize for that disgusting display," and I was like, "What the hell are you talking about? It's funny. It's a fake moon. Like I don't do this." So I got, but in general, I think actually Joe Buck is pretty. I like Joe Buck's calls, and I know that people love to complain about the homerism of
Mhm.
him, or he and Troy Aikman. I think there was a long time that people thought they were biased against the Seahawks, or maybe that was just. I've never picked up on that.
Yeah, I will say I guess that's one guy I will say. I don't think I'm not in love with Aikman, but I don't really read it as I don't mind even if they were biased against the Seahawks. From just a pro wrestling sense, it's like another thing to be passionate about in the game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find him to be just a little bit the guys that are like the tail end of Joe Morgan and was it John Miller, right?
Yes,
On
yes.
Sunday Night Baseball, like where I was getting into analytics and those guys were decidedly not into analytics. I loved both those guys until I ruined them for me. They didn't do anything. I ruined them for me.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned pro wrestling because I was actually thinking about the guy that criticized Ryan Rowland-Smith's accent. It was like the proper way to play this for maximum exposure is to fully lean into it and heel turn of like, I can't believe that you guys tolerate someone with an Australian accent. It would take you would have to have a huge tolerance for immediate hatred. But the potential, like 4 or 5 months down the road payoff for a full heel turn like that could be tremendous.
I agree with you, and I think that were he to have like a podcast instead of a radio show that's got sponsors and that wants access to that team, you know what I mean? Like I don't think there's no way that the radio's struggling enough as it is. They would have folded, and it's nothing about them in particular. Every radio station in the world would have folded the moment there was and by the way, that's probably what happened. I bet you, my instinct is that dude did not really want to apologize.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I wondered if he just stepped in it to a degree that it really surprised him.
Sure.
But I would tend to agree that he probably hoped he would never have to address it. That was kind of his, and maybe was told he needed to address it. I always thought when A-Rod, especially when he was with the Yankees and kind of started acting out and I was like, he's got to go full heel here. Like, come out, do interviews with like women in bikinis on either side of you and being like, you hate me because you can't be me. Like, just go full heel but you're right. Like, people won't take the short-term hit in popularity or what the short-term cost, because if A-Rod had done that, he would be much more liked now. Like, there would be a certain group of people that kind of care. Jay Cutler's a great example. Do you know that Jay Cutler's now popular in Chicago? Like, people kind of like Jay Cutler. Yeah. Wow. And somebody asked him about it. He's like, yeah, it annoys me because I'm the exact same. And everybody hated me when I was here. And now they think it's kind of cool that I was aloof and indifferent and kind of couldn't be bothered with stuff. So I think if you have the pain tolerance for the initial blowback, like, actually being an ass can be a long-term solid career move.
When the Marc James thing happened, I have a comedy podcast with a buddy of mine named Jess Everett. At the time, it was called the Underseasoned Podcast.
Uh-huh.
And we found out because they commented on our YouTube that there was an Australian barbecue podcast called the Underseasoned Barbecue Show. And we had like some good interactions with them on Instagram or whatever, and we decided to change the name, but I was like, hey guys, I think we could both get a little bit out of this. Do you guys want to do like a pro wrestling thing out of it? And so I went on an episode and I was like, these koala smoking motherfuckers, like I went so much further than Marc James went. And obviously I don't have there's no radio station looking to hire or fire me, so it didn't matter. But I was like, if Seattle turns in favor that hard of Australia, I got a lot of bad tape out there on me. Because we
Oh, that's so funny.
I said, you like wallaby smoking British prisoner colony. Like, I did everything. I said everything. I just gave all the facts I knew about Australia, and it was like, I mean, you know, by the way, they thought it was great. Whether a person who finds it on social media and has a Seattle sensibility in the moment when Ryan Rowland-Smith became a hero is gonna, and I got nothing against Australians or Ryan Rowland-Smith. It was very funny for all of us, all involved. And, but yeah, I was like, damn, am I going to have to apologize for this thing that we agreed was funny, me and everyone else involved? If the Ryan Rowland-Smith thing got big enough.
You'd be accused of a version of a hate crime. Like, no,
xenophobia against Australians.
I did think of that, was like, because there were some people of like, how dare you make fun of his accent? And I was like, I get that, because that is like a legit thing. Like, you shouldn't be. I was like, but it's generally not applied to Australians. Like, it was just, it tweaked it a little bit where I realized I didn't have the same defensiveness of Australians that I probably should. Like, I don't think of them people being disadvantaged because people don't want to listen to Australia. It's like, generally everybody likes the Australians.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, I'm pretty, making fun of someone's accent, I think, is like, I mean, I'm coming from a different world, obviously, but like, that feels pretty fair game to me. I think there's some accents that people rightfully and sometimes not that rightfully get mad at, but I don't think Australians are in that hierarchy. I think we're allowed to make fun of Australians. That's my stance on the whole thing is we can do it. That's fine.
If the rules change, I'd like a memo. I'll adjust my behavior accordingly.
Give me immunity for the past and 60 days notice to get out all of my Australian hate, and then we'll move on. Yeah, and I think that guy kept his job, right? The dude, yeah. And maybe, like you said, or I think we might have said this off the podcast, but like radio's everyone has an expiration date. I took radio classes in college, and they said like your career doesn't start until you've been fired for the first time. Is what they told us in college going into that industry. I'm I by the way, not this dude's first job, and he's got other controversy in his past, whatever. I don't even want to get into that. To me, it felt like a very Seattle overreaction to a thing. Yes. And even like, by the way, the guy that he interviewed that he shat on, I felt bad for that guy, but like, it's in the pro wrestling thing, like it could have all been much more fun than this like finger wagging thing that we were doing and like calling for them to fire him because he made fun of an Australian. Give us a break. I generally feel like in those sort of things, like you absolutely have the right to say I'm never going to appear or I'm never. And I thought Luke kind of he said his piece, and then the guy came back like doubly hard, and he ended up looking bad, and that's the end of it. Like, does it need to? Do you need to have a firm stand on it? Not really. Like, I don't think everything needs to be a referendum. Sometimes it's just a little data point about a person, and if Luke was put off by it and didn't want to go on his program again, and great. And if the guy was like, I'm bent out of shape because you said that publicly, and I'm going to say that your interview was boring, like, everybody, all of these things eventually get sorted out. Like, there was no permanent harm done anywhere. Yeah. Well, I think the real lesson is to pre-record your interviews, I guess, because no, that's actually the real lesson here is don't tweet. Because if you just say things, they vanish into the ether. They are a fart in the wind. But when you tweet things, like your exact words get cycled around, and there's no ability to say like, oh, you didn't get the right context for that. What did you actually say? Did you hear it? Like when you tweet it, you're just hanging both your butt cheeks out in the air for everybody to look at your ass. It's also funny because, by the way, if you're on the pre-recording note, this interview was actually 3.5 hours long. Anything offensive Danny said has been cut out. So if it's not 3.5 hours long, just know that there was some really horrible shit that was said that I cut out. I won't stand for it or stand behind it, but
he's got a real problem with Australians.
Yeah. The funny thing is now, like you say things into a microphone, it goes out into the air or whatever. Now everyone's putting this stuff out as a podcast also, so I was able to actually go download it and listen to it. If they weren't doing that, if they didn't self-own, there was actually an event on the same station. A guy that I actually like his analysis quite a bit, Hugh Millen, said an offensive thing about. Well, by the way, significantly more offensive thing about James Harden, I remember, which was that if he goes to an airport and sees a guy with that beard, he doesn't want to get on the plane.
Oh,
that's so much worse than saying that guy should be calling Australian rules football. But at least KJR had the decency to take the podcast down so that I couldn't find it. I had to really search.
Oh, it's such a weird media world that exists, and what is and isn't gets circulated, and how things become things, and what we choose to get bent out of shape or really upset about.
Yeah. Do you have any feelings on this Seahawks top 50 list?
How high do you put Russell?
Man, that's a good question. I'm definitely. So I think you did a top 10.
Yeah.
thing recently. Oh yeah, I responded to it, and then my friend Dan Viens did a Mount Rushmore of
from Seahawks forever. Yeah,
yeah, and I would put Russ on my Mount Rushmore. He did a
You
really
would?
elegant
Okay.
thing, I thought, which was he put Pete Carroll up there to kind of represent that whole era, which I think
Yeah.
is actually it's a little bit of a cop out, but I think it's like the best way, because for me it's like Sherm and Russ are both on that, and then you're like, well, you got to put Walton Largent also.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
I don't know what I don't know how to go. I don't know how to move past that. So I thought it was a little bit elegant and a little bit of cheating to put Pete Carroll up there.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good answer.
Yeah. What do you, I mean? I think that like it's the most important position. His best statistical years were not the years they won the Super Bowl, but he did take them to a Super Bowl victory, which is, I mean, to me, that's like the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
I
don't think they win the Super Bowl that year without him. I don't think he was the best football player on the team, but I don't think they win the Super Bowl that year without him.
Yeah, it's like people do that a lot though, where they're like, well, he's the best player at his position, and I'm like, okay, but like the best long snapper, if the guy's like a generational long snapper, we don't care about that. So the position does matter, right? Like
position absolutely matters.
Yeah. So I mean, if he was, at his peak, was he the number one quarterback in the NFL? Probably not. At his peak, was Richard Sherman the number one corner in football? I think so. Was Earl the number one safety in football? I think so. Was Bobby in the argument for the top linebacker in football? I think so. Cam in this, you go down the defense and there's a bunch of guys that are in the discussion, but like none of those positions are as important as quarterbacks. So like to me, I do adjust for position, and I think, yeah, for me, he's. I mean, maybe Largent and Walt are ahead of him, but my personal taste, I can make an argument that he's ahead of those guys. But I'm curious if you want to argue against that. My memory of your list is that you had him deeper in the top 10.
I left him off the first one, and I had Hasselbeck on over him, and I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that was probably a product of some of my own bias or feelings about Russ. Both the way he left, and kind of my rationale was, I don't have Hutchinson on the list, and I consider Hutchinson to be as much a Viking or maybe more of a Viking than a Seahawk, just because of how he left. And he's the best guard. I think he's the best guard. Kevin Mouet, but he played center. Hutchinson is one of the best offensive linemen that's ever played for the franchise, but I keep him a notch down just because he left as a free agent. And I was kind of including Russ in the same. He stayed longer. He played 10 full years. And I just think that I got a little hung up on sort of my perceptions of his own self-interest. I think he's probably got to be on the list, and at least 5 or 6 if I was going to do it again. But it's an interesting question, because he is in somewhat the same way, kind of has some of the same reaction locally that Sean Alexander had, which is maybe his own success gets undercut by kind of people's perception. And I would say, in my observations, the reality that those guys did put themselves first in a way that we're generally not very comfortable with of superstar athletes.
Yeah, the Russ legacy, I do kind of think, I feel like Sean Alexander in the last couple of years has gotten rehabbed just by not being in the Seahawks spotlight. I think he does some Alabama commentary, some college football commentary every now and then, but like, he's just not on our radars here very much anymore. And I think that helps. I think it just like, and he's not like a bad dude. Sean Alexander never had any and the same with Russ. Like, Russ has no off the field transgressions, and the arguments that like he gets a hard time when Tyreek Hill's beating his kids or whatever. Like, I get that. Those are perfectly valid. He's like grating. Like, his personality is grating, and that's I have a friend that is she was trained she doesn't work for the FBI, but she took like FBI level
profiling.
There you go.
Oh,
like
no
FBI
kidding.
Level profiling. Yes.
Oh,
and
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and she said she'll watch a Russell. She had to stop watching Russell Wilson interviews because it's like her meter's just like off the. It's like breaking the needle off as far as how much lying and disingenuous shit he's saying, and that's like, to me, like that stuff. Once I found that out, he was already gone by then. But I was like, she said that, and then you've heard all the like destruction of his character. Since he left, by the way, which is always to me very cowardly, and maybe there's probably a practicality to it, like I said about the guy or like KJR wants access to the Mariners. There's practicality to not trashing the star quarterback of the most popular team in city history, but also like all these stories come out after the guy's gone is a little bit of like, pissing on his grave that I feel like was a little bit cowardly. But all that being said, yeah, when he left, I said he was the best Seahawk in history. And I'm like willing to walk that back a little bit, but I do think my dad also thinks that Matt Hasselbeck is better, and I think that's the most. I think that's fully painted by like how much you don't like him. There's no argument for it.
I would tend to agree, and that's just someone who made that list like a week and a half ago that said that. The one thing I will say about Russ is a lot of people say he changed over his time in Seattle, and that he went Hollywood or became a super. And I don't think that's true. I think his personality has remained pretty consistent. Maybe the scale, just because he had a larger profile, but I didn't feel that he changed. I think that you saw some of the long-term, like, grading is a good word, that it eventually kind of wore on people around him, but I didn't think it was a case where he became someone different.
Yeah, I guess it's like, it's one of those things where you hope when you become wealthy or famous, you'd be benevolent, and the reality is that like most of us would just crumble and become dickheads the moment we got just an ounce of power. Like I get, I'm not I think it's possible that what happened is, and it's not to say that Ciara is responsible for any of his personality flaws, but that dating Ciara gave him a national spotlight that he did not have before, and just really exposed. Like, it's like if all of his personality flaws are rocks in a river, she lowered the water level so that we could see every single one of them very well. You know what I mean?
Or draped it in designer clothing to make sure that his wardrobe definitely changed.
That's true. And the like the swings he would take on stuff like the Mr. Unlimited thing was just unforgivable. The Subway commercials, I feel like someone should have fired. Like, he should have never let those come out. That those made it out was like a real indictment on whoever was protecting his image. I'm going to say a thing about a guy that was your former coworker that has anybody gotten more out of being a 5-star high school recruit and like not a good college quarterback than Jake Heaps? I like him, by the way. I got no beef with him.
Jake too. I like Jake too. I love Jake. It's tough. I would say that it's really tough to get that prominent that early, because by all indications, like, Jake had a really good football career, right? If it's just, you're talking about someone who played high school football and ended up playing at some pretty high level colleges and got a couple looks in the NFL, and it just didn't pan out. But because of the profile he had as a senior in high school and the high school he went to, and I would say then being attached to Russ, I legitimately felt really bad for Jake in Denver, because his presence actually became a story. And I was like, there's nothing Jake's doing wrong here, right? Like, sure. He's just trying to coach, and he's trying to be supportive. Russell is his friend, and I know that there were times that he ended up being put in a position where he had to kind of defend Russ, and it's really tough. I love Jake, and really good dad, but that that was a hard assignment. Like that's a tough task to follow through on all of those, to end up trying to make a media career and then being attached to a quarterback who pushes his way out of town for a huge profile. He ended up taking a lot of bullets, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think ultimately they got to their real target. Russell Wilson's obviously, I actually haven't watched it completely, but he did the Carmelo Anthony and
and Miro?
Yeah, and Miro. He did that podcast recently.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I haven't watched it all, but it's I just saw him, I saw that he was on it. And Golden Tate, by the way, did the Bussin' with the Boys podcast that I watched just a brief moment of. So those are two things that my list of things to watch is stacking up right now. I felt like I've had nothing for months, and now it's there's a bunch of stuff coming out that I care about. But yeah, I'll be curious to see how. I'm also I do kind of wonder if going to New York in the way that he's there, so high profile city, and he's there as this guy that's just a bridge to Jackson Dart, is maybe the perfect way for him to rehab his career and be there's no expectations. If he goes out and loses 11 games, that's expected. There's no, it's almost like his rookie year again, where it's we got another guy for this job. You don't even have to just come out and, go through the motions. He's 37 now or whatever, but.
Here's the challenge for Russ, because I don't think this is going to go well in New York. If he approached this as this is the bridge point in my career, I do think that this would be a spot where there's not a ton of pressure on him, and it is possible for him to pivot and elongate his career for a couple years. I think skill set wise, Russ would be a great backup for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he will be suited for that. And I think that's entirely because of how he is with other guys in the room.
Yeah.
Somebody
got a
told
little
me,
bit of the Tebow, Kaepernick, Cam Newton kind of thing. I mean, Shedeur Sanders too, where it's he's going to take over the headlines.
I think it's more. I think Jackson Dart will be the guy that gets the most attention this year. I think it's strictly basically a backup quarterback. Their primary job is to get the starter ready and to be a good hang. That's kind of what the backup quarterback is supposed to do. He's supposed to be a little bit of cheerleader, a little bit of companion, provide some insight. And Russ is and will always be an extreme competitor with that. It was one of the reasons that the relationship between he and Matt Flynn was strained, which very well might be the reason why things went off the rails, why Aaron Rodgers always seemed to be annoyed at Russ. And maybe it was just Aaron was annoyed at Russ in general, but I always thought because Russ approached it like, I'm competing against you. And
did you mean Matt Flynn?
Yes. Did I say Matt Rodgers?
You said Aaron Rodgers.
No, my bad. So
you
Matt
said full on Aaron Rodgers.
So Matt Flynn, that was one of the reasons why the relationship between him and Matt Flynn is he viewed him as a competitor. Matt had been Aaron Rodgers' backup, and when Aaron got salty with Russ, I kind of thought it was because Matt had some strong feelings about how Russ acted in their quarterback room with the Seahawks.
Gotcha.
I don't know what kind of companion Russ will be as a quarterback. And I mean, he's certainly got the skills. I don't know if he's going to end up being a backup quarterback. I think as soon as they go to Jackson Dart, I think it's going to be really hard for him. And I don't expect him to have a long-term role with the Giants unless he is the winning starting quarterback. And even then there's going to be an expiration on that because they are going to eventually want to turn it over to Dart.
Sure. Isn't Jameis Winston's in that quarterback room too,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Can you have imagined, and I got to go, and I'm sure you got to go, but can you have imagined early in his career, Jameis Winston being the glue guy as the third quarterback.
It's so funny. That's one of those that where I think I know sometimes or how people are perceived, but dudes really love Jameis. And I would not have expected that when he was coming out or even his first year or two. Guys really like hanging out with Jameis, which is really, really, I mean, tribute to him. Like, that's a guy that's going to get the most out of his career because he is a good hang. And I think he's strictly in that room to make sure that it's not insufferable intense between those two.
That's very funny to have a Russ buffer between Jackson Dart and
he's there to hang. I, honest to God, fully believe he is there to hang out with Jackson Dart because they know that that's not going to be Russ's MO.
That's hilarious. All right, well, I'll let you go. You have the Dang Apostrophe on Substack.
It is.
The Dang Apostrophe.
It's just DannyO'Neill.com, and then you'll have the Dang Apostrophe you can sign up for.
Okay, and also the Grudgery, and I was checking the old Substack, and something popped up from 2 days ago that might be headed our way also, right?
So my mom married a moderate narcissist.
Yeah, okay. So come out, go check that out. That's all on your Substack. Busiest guy in New York right now.
It's not true. Trying a bunch of different stuff and see if throwing a bunch of things against the wall.
By the way, so Christian Capel, I'm not going to say how I know him, but I know him. We just said all that stuff off the podcast. That makes it sound much more lewd than it is. I know Christian Capel. The first time I talked to him, I called the podcast Say What, Say Who, and embarrassingly, it's Say Who, Say Pod.
That's correct.
I listen to it every week. Always forget what the actual it's Say Who, Say Pod, right?
That is correct. We need to work on our branding, apparently.
Well, you need to work on the who's listening, I think that's the key. Just confidently said to him, by the way, to his face. Anyways, thank you for coming on, and you can dance to the music one last time as I end the podcast. And if you'll hang out for a minute so your files will upload, I would appreciate it. All right,
absolutely.
Here goes the music.